Hey, everybody. Welcome to this special report for Kokx News. Today is Tuesday, September 2nd. And who knew, but James Martin, the infamous Jesuit priest, is a miracle worker. And what is the miracle he just pulled off? Well, he seems to have just united the clans, something that neither Cardinal Burke or Michael Matt have been able to do thus far. In fact, after just meeting with Leo at the Vatican, we'll post a picture up here in just a second. Here's the image here. Father Martin, James Martin, Jesuit priest. There's an old joke here that says, what's the difference between a Jesuit and a Protestant? Well, the Protestant knows they're not Catholic. So, James Martin, priest, maybe not. In any case, Martin visited with Leo as he did with Francis, the predecessor. He said, I'm profoundly grateful for my audience at the Apostolic Palace with the Holy Father today. The message I received was that Leo will be continuing with the same openness and that Francis showed to LGBTQ Catholics. I found Leo to be joyful, relaxed, and serene. Now, there hasn't been any sort of correction forthcoming on this. I think those who want to see this with rose-colored glasses will say, well, this is James Martin's interpretation of the meeting. We don't know necessarily what the Vatican's view was. Obviously, Martin wants to claim Leo for his own. But what does Leo have to say? Well, in any case, this has engendered a massive blowback from those who, over the past, 5-6 months now, have been saying, well, let's just give him time. Let's see what happens. Well, this seems to be causing a lot of problems, or at least a lot of people to react strongly. Nick Donnelly, who's been a big champion of Leo and the new narrative that we are so back, seems to have cracked today, especially on this issue. Here he is on Twitter. Pope Leo vows continuity with Bergoglio regarding LGBT. He says the church will continue to bless the sin of sodomy. Leo will continue to appoint militant pro-LGBT cardinals and bishops, etc. After, of course, linking to the fact that Martin met with Leo today. Others are, again, chiming in. Again, this is a big deal. Again, it does seem to be the straw that broke the camel's back. Here's the Lepanto Institute, Michael Hitchborn. The only appropriate reason for meeting with James Martin is excommunicate him. Very true, Michael. Fred Simon. Pope Leo is neither stupid nor naive. He knew full well the reaction this meeting and images would provoke, especially in the United States, and yet he did it anyway. What is the message he's sending? It's a good question. Our old friend Taylor Marshall, who just blocked us the other day, not sure why, just posted the picture. No comment, I guess. He's too busy to share us his thoughts for that. Sort of interesting. Archbishop Vigano has weighed in, saying essentially what he said to us in a recent interview. He says, quote, if anyone still harbors doubts about the ideological continuity between Bergoglio and Prevost, they have only to listen to the praise heaped on Leo by the champion of sodomites and LGBT perversions after today's audience. And he's, of course, referring to what Martin said. Here's what Martin says. I was moved to hear the same message I heard from Francis about LGBT Catholics coming from Leo. And importantly, His Excellency Vigano says, now it is up to Leo to disprove, taking by severely punishing those who promote homoeroticism, transsexualism, gender, and pedophilia. It's a great point. Others as well are speaking up. Again, a couple more slides here. John Henry Weston, recently reinstalled president and CEO of LifeSite News. This is the nightmare scenario I warned of at the start of Leo's papacy. As I told Glenn Beck, a less bombastic pope could quietly cement a false new direction. The James Martin approach defies Christ, his church, scripture, and 2,000 years of tradition. So good for John Henry for speaking up here. Again, Catholic Esquire, part of the anti-liberal new trad media landscape, who I've had on multiple podcasts doing great work over there on his own YouTube channel. Here he's reiterating that point that John Henry just made. Stop making excuses, he says. Leo is cementing into place the Bergoglian agenda with the veneer of Catholicism, and it is working. right? People are forgetting this point. Anthony Stein, good response here, Anthony. Kudos to you. I've been reliably informed that we need to zip it when we see obvious problems like this. Talk more about why that's a significant tweet in just a second. But here I think is the ultimate response that we should have here. Again, Chris Jackson. When Trad Inc. inevitably gets around to criticizing Leo, the first words out of their mouth should be, "I'm sorry." Absolutely. Where have you all been this past 5-6 months, right? Now you're only finally realizing because James Martin did it, went to the Vatican. It wasn't the multitude of remarks that Leo has been saying in favor of ecumenism, his appointments to women and to dicasteries in the Vatican, his promotion of the common home terminology, his massive care of creation. These other things were not enough. It only had to be James Martin that did it. Chris Jackson says, he goes on, a public apology for constantly running cover for this man, burying his bad words and actions, promoting irrelevant stories as signs of renewal, and criticizing those who did their jobs for them. It's a great point, Chris. We here at Kokx News believe we've been doing that, and we've been getting attacked for that. We've been getting attacked from a lot of quarters, and we're happy to take it. We're happy to take the slings and arrows because we know that that's part of the job. That's part of what you sign up for when you become a Catholic. You speak the truth in season and out. You don't zip it in order to curry favor for Latin masses, which again is not the solution. Yves Congar, Rahner, de Lubac, they all said the Latin Mass. We are fighting for the doctrine of the faith, right? That's our battle. We speak the truth and we let God figure out the rest. If we want to, if the Vatican's going to put us in trouble or give us, excommunicate us, how they did Vigano for speaking out, what do we care? We speak the truth, and we let the chips fall maybe where they lie, right? So, again, this is Jackson here. They distributed the Leo Kool-Aid knowing full well it was poison. He's talking about Trad Inc. As they told us it was even before he was elected. How do you come back from such a breach of trust? I'm not sure it's possible. That's the most important thing. This is a mask-off moment. The last 4 or 5 months here. Mask-off moment. We know who are those who are going to continue to speak out and those who are trying to play politics with the faith, right? And those who are not interested in sticking their neck out and defending the truth. And I wrote about this in a recent Substack. Go to the Kokx News. It'll be in the comments today. Check it out. And it's a good summary of what we're going to talk about for the rest of the podcast today because, again, a show with Michael Matt and Taylor Marshall. I'll play it for you. This was what I thought was the most significant part of this podcast that they did together. Again, this confirms, seems to me, my theory all along that Burke has been telling, Trad Inc. influencers in the U.S., the highest, most influential ones, to say, hey, tone it down because we have to curry favor with him in order to get the Latin Mass back, to get the beautiful vestments and things. So we'll listen to that.
The most we can. And if there is any goodwill in Pope Leo, which I believe there is, and if he sees that we're willing to meet him a little bit on something like the Latin Mass, well, great. Cardinal Burke was just talking to him last week, probably about the Latin Mass. If Cardinal Burke turns around and he sees a traditional Catholic movement like Night of the Living Dead, Leo is a heretic. Well, it's just silly. It doesn't accomplish anything. So even in terms of trying to get some advantages like the Latin Mass restored, it makes sense to kind of zip it a little bit and see what happens with men like Cardinal Burke and Cardinal Muller and Cardinal Sarah who are pushing in a favorable direction.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, right? I mean, what we hear in Scripture says, preach the truth in season and out. And Michael Matt's not interested in that. Hey, just zip it. A line which would go down in infamy, sadly, from someone who's been in this battle for decades. We're not going to zip it because the truth is the best solvent for everything. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And we know that when we speak the truth, we defend the honor of God, right? That's what we're in this for. We are in this for the honor of God. We're not to play politics with the faith, right? And I put this out on Twitter the other day. I hope to go back and read this blog. I'll bring it back up here just again real quick because I put this in the blog here. I want to go down to it. And by the way, so here's essentially what's going on here, right? I mean, we're just following the path that Matt himself pioneered for the last 12 years. Continuing to ask the same questions, continuing to expose the errors, again, for the honor of God, not for our own sake, right? These are when you have the highest office in the world, the papacy, being used to promote modernism, which is what Leo's doing because Vatican II is a modernist council. The documents are infused with modernism. So any conservative who wants to go back to the council, as it seems Burke just wants us to do, who, by the way, never issued that fraternal correction, right? Did he? Did I forget that? I don't remember him ever doing that. So we're supposed to just put our blind trust in Cardinal Burke? I don't understand it. So, we just want to go back to the council, the 1962 liturgy, the Bunini-infused liturgy documents, the Yves Congar written documents, and the rest. No, that's not the solution. No. So, but here's my main point here. I put this out on Twitter, but we cannot remain silent because our duty is not so much to expose Leo, it's to defend the honor and glory of God, right? That's why we speak the truth. If there's a math teacher who's saying 2 and 2 is 5, everyone's going to come down on him and say, hey, what are you doing? 2 and 2 is 4, right? School teacher's going to be fired. Principal will be fired if they don't correct him. Well, this doesn't just involve math problems. This involves people's souls, right? So, for those who claim to see what's going on here and say, well, just give them more time, be quiet, souls are being led astray thanks to that advice. And error is getting out and being spread by the highest office in the world. So for those who say, well, just give them time, ignore, just zip it, that's like seeing a murderer and not doing anything about it when you might be able to stop it. In fact, that's what we're living through right now. But Leo is promoting heresy, objectively, with ecumenism, all these other things that he's saying and doing, synodality, continuing the blessings of gay couples. That's like saying, I'm seeing souls being led to hell. I'm not going to do anything about it. So, we do this because, again, as St. Pius X says, silence or indolence on our part would incriminate us too. That's what we're doing. Again, we're just the stones crying out. We have 3,000 followers on this YouTube channel, 2,000 followers on Substack. We're nobodies, right? The hope is that the big dogs, right, those who seemingly are in touch with Burke, it seems like Matt's saying that. He's essentially saying, look, I've been in touch with Cardinal Burke, and he's disappointed in too many people speaking out. Well, I'd like to know maybe why should we trust Cardinal Burke anyway? He just wants to go back to Vatican II, right? What's going to happen? We're going to get more Latin masses, and then what? More Latin masses. The Latin mass is not the issue. The Latin mass is an aesthetic thing for sure, but the doctrine is the issue. Vatican II is the issue. These are squatters in the Vatican who do not have the right to be there since the council. If you don't want to go back to pre-Vatican II Catholicism, the faith which is now being pushed out into small pockets across the world by faithful clergy who are clinging to it, those like Archbishop Vigan who recognize the council was the revolution, those who, like Archbishop Lefebvre, and those who truly follow him, will say, hey, we don't want any part of this conciliar zoo. We don't want to be put in the cage. We don't want to be put in this ecumenical pantheon. That's the old position of Lefebvre and his most mature thought, as far as I can tell. Again, being put into that pluralistic system is the compromise, right? So that's the issue. Lefebvre was not so much in favor of wanting a free SPX and a free conciliar church, because there's some people out here saying, well, the SPX will never compromise, they'll make a deal and they'll never change. Well, I mean, clearly you've never been around long enough, because there's been a lot of priests who have left the SSPX and who do recognize the changes that have occurred. And I encourage you actually to get this book, As We Are by Sean Johnson. 101 Compromises, Changes, and Contradictions of an SSPX in Pursuit of a Practical Accord with Modernist Rome. Check it out. I think that's really, really significant. But the situation at hand. So let's return to this. Why can't we go silent? I mean, there's been quite a few memes that have come out in response to this. Louis Verrecchio's gave a really good one. I thought it was really great. It's called Zip It, right? Zip it, bop it, delete it, ignore it. Oh, that was really great. So kudos to Louis for doing that. And again, please go check out the Substack today. At root of all this, okay, what are we really trying to get at? Is to again remind people that this is the Burgoynean Revolution on steroids, which again takes its roots from the council itself, right? When we say this, what are we referring to? Well, Kokx Esquire has a pretty good take on this, as usual. He's doing great work. Just had him on the show the other day. Here's what he says. For those who don't understand the Francis 2.0 metaphor, it doesn't mean Leo is an exact copy of Francis. It means he accepts the foundation Francis built as the norm and is building on it. And in the eyes of the modernists, transforming it into something better. Right. That's the important thing here to make note of. And, it's interesting when, we were calling this out along with Kokx Esquire, Chris Jackson, etc. for the last, 7-8 months. What were we accused of? Right? Here's Eric Salmons. Him and Tim Flanders, Kennedy Hall did a podcast. Trad-doomerism. Here's a video of Kennedy basically saying, we're all guilty of doomerism.
So there's a lot of talk about the new Pope, obviously, but amongst traditionalists, there seems to be a trend or a stream of a type of despair or doomerism or something.
All right. So, yeah, obviously, first of all, pray for Kennedy's family. His preborn daughter has heart issues, I think, and I'm not sure she'll make it. And so I clearly pray for Kennedy and his family. It's a very, very difficult situation. But bring it back to this. I mean, we'll gladly accept apologies from everybody who was dumping on us from the beginning, after we called out, as well as very, very few others, Chris Jackson, Kokx Esquire among them. On day one, we wrote about this. Go check this out on our blog. Again, we were there, reminding people to not fall for the psyop, and we got in trouble for that. Here it is. Leo's first 100 days. Again, we have to keep our heads on straight. So this thing that's going on with James Martin and Leo, this is not surprising. Things like this have been happening so far. Okay. You just have not been being informed about it by the tragic influencers who are telling us to zip it. Right. It's like selling your birthright for a bowl of porridge, right? This is Jacob and Esau. Hey, just be quiet. You're going to get your Latin mass. You're going to be okay. What is our faith worth? The battle is not, again, over the Latin mass, the aesthetics. It's about the doctrines. So inevitably, I'm starting to hear now that, well, you're being too acerbic, too angry, too quick to the punch. You're picking the wrong battle, right? Our battle needs to be focused on Rome. And I absolutely agree. Which is what we have been doing for the last 12 years. Myself and others, especially all these big-time influencers, we're in the trenches, fighting the same fight, fighting the same enemy for the last 12 years. It's only now that's changed. They have splintered off and gone to be accordists, to seek a reconciliation, to go silent in exchange for favorable treatment. This happens in every sort of movement. those establishment who will go off and try to be part of the bigger apparatus to get favorable treatment. Somewhat normal almost, but you would never have thought, at least I never would have, it would have been happening in this moment in the church, right? Because we know our battle is not just political. It's over the faith. It's speaking the truth. And Catholic Esquire, again, read his Substack here. I tweeted it. He says, here's the main issue, and we'll focus down here. This quote is taken from his Substack. When those who claim to be on your team are not willing to even broach the subject, then the fight must shift to a new battleground. It appears the fight for tradition is now at that stage. A new operation to rescue the church must begin, and sadly, it may need to leave a few buddies behind. And I reiterated this point after I made this meme here. All right. This guy says, easy amigo, trads are being split up into factions to tear each other apart while the disco party rages in Rome. Well, the disco party is raging, that's for sure, especially with James Martin there. But here's my response. This is a mask-off moment. We're living in a mask-off moment, right? Where the fake semi-trads and the real counter-revolutionaries who want to repeal the council and understand the battle is about doctrine and not just the Latin Mass has come to light. The controlled opposition forces have exposed themselves. I go on. We view the squatters in Rome as having no right to be there. We won't be playing politics with them or the faith. We do not negotiate it with theological terrorists. We don't negotiate with theological terrorists. Simple as that. That's what these modernists are. That's what these squatters in Rome are. Others who want to go along with this, they don't understand the crisis then. You want to be a side chapel in the conciliar cathedral, which is a phrase I've been using, by the way, but it comes from Bishop Sanborn. Okay, so credit all to him. That's your prerogative. That's not the fight that Lefebvre understood. He knew the council was the issue. He said, I'm going to put the issue and the conversation at the level of doctrine. It's a dialogue of death unless we're going to discuss anything other than that. So what's the point of it all, right? But again, it's the Trad Inc., the Ecclesia Dei, the indolent groups who seemingly want only to have approval from heretics in Rome. Our battle must be to have the heretics see themselves as not Catholic and then to convert and to solve this crisis. That's what Lefebvre said will be the solution, right? Not to have the SSPX regularized, not to have tradition, quote unquote, make a deal with the Vatican, these usurpers, okay, they have no right to be there. That's not the answer. And in fact, that's scandalous of itself, right? In fact, if you go back and read what the SSPX had to say when Le Beroux, this is a French Dom Girard, made a deal with the Vatican, Dom Girard justified his deal with the Vatican in the early 90s. He was a very early collaborator, might have been in the late 80s, I'm not sure. Very early collaborator with Archbishop Lefebvre in the 80s. And Dom Girard said, look, they promised me I will have freedom to condemn the council. I won't have to say the new Mass. There are legal structures in place where I'm going to be allowed to say what I want, and we're going to be able to preach the old faith. That in itself was enough to have Lefebvre say, that's a betrayal. And sure enough, over time, the sort of gravity of regularization with this false church took its hold of the Dom Girard community. And within, I think, less than 10 years, they were saying the Novus Ordo Mass. And this is what happens. This is why all the other groups are compromised. The FSSP, Institute of Christ the King, and all in some way, except the council as continuity, as something that's in alignment with the past. It's the classic Ratzinger dialectic, the hermeneutic of continuity, the extraordinary form versus the ordinary form. No, sorry, that's not how it goes. No, it is a black and white, pre and post situation where there's a clear break with the actual faith itself. Vatican II is not the answer. And we're seeing now, finally, again, thankfully, more of those persons who, for the last 5-6 months, have been playing ball, have been playing quiet, have been zipping it. Zip it. Now they're finally starting to wake up. I pray that more of them will continue to speak up and that this is a pivotal turning point and that they realize, look, our duty is to speak the truth. That's it. Very simple. That's what Scripture tells us. Let your yes be yes, no be no. Not to zip it and play politics. That's not with a faith. Not with a faith. And so we will do that here at Kokx News. Let's continue to pray that more stones start to cry out, and that they start speaking out in the way that they used to over the last 12 years. Thank you for watching today, everybody. Until next time, God bless.